Hey folks, it's Fernando doing our video for the More Survivalist, and I want to show you something that I have going on here with my MR73. And when I first got it, I knew that someone had been messing with it, the previous owner, because there was a screw lacking. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Let's remove the grip panels here. So this is kind of why it's important to know how to do your own gunsmithing. You know, repair your own guns, know what's wrong with them and such. So let's remove those grips. Go. And this is the first sign of something being wrong. Well, there's already something there. This pin thing here should not be there. And there's also the screw missing. This is the screw that in Manurhin MR73 adjusts the spring that puts pressure on the trigger. So it adjusts the trigger spring. It's separate. It's not the same. You have one spring for the hammer, right? And you have another spring for the trigger. That's kind of the thing about the MR73 that makes it unique. So here it's missing that screw. I mean, the gun actually still works, which is, you know, it says a lot about the gun, but this is missing the screw and it's missing the original pin that, as you see, that's not it. It's much smaller. It's just like a needle nail kind of thing going on there, and it's missing the pin, and this is not the original trigger spring either. Now I have a small bag here with a few spare parts. So I have the trigger spring adjustment screw. I have the original trigger spring as well. I don't have one of the pins. I don't have that pin, but that should be simple enough to make my own. I was tempted to get the original part, but you know, it's going to be taking some time. It's probably going to be, you know, expensive for a little pin, which I could do myself. So I'm going to be doing that as a little project and see how it turns out. I just want to give you guys a heads up so as to know where I'm starting from, okay? So as you see, I took the MR73 apart and I removed these parts that were made by whoever worked on this gun before, probably some small town, well, not small town because there's some great gunsmith in small towns, but small time gunsmith that thought this was the right solution for not having the right part, which is not. This is the spring that whoever worked on this gun came up with. It actually worked. This is the actual original part. So instead of having this tiny little needle thing, I have the actual spring, and I didn't buy the actual pin. That I took the liberty of making myself with a piece of stainless steel, working on it a little bit until it fits snugly the way it should, which it actually does. I give it a couple whacks so that it would deform a little bit on the edges and thus stay in place, because this has to be pretty much flush when assembled, and yeah, that it does, a little bit of wiggle, there it goes. So you see how that ends up looking flush there in place, and of course the grips are going to be keeping it from moving. So yeah, it's not the original part, but man, it is definitely close enough. So this is going to be there, and it's going to be putting pressure here on this piece with a lever, and you see those two rollers, those two wheels are actually what makes the trigger on the MR73 so smooth, because it's rolling on those two little wheels. You know, just the beauty of this system. I would describe it as an upgraded, you know, luxury version of the Smith & Wesson. You know, you have your spring, but you also have this stuff going on that makes it super smooth, and it's very short as well. It's a very short double action, which I love. Not very common in revolvers. Everything is, you know, hand fitted and polished so that to have the minimum amount of friction. I'm going to be putting a couple little drops of oil, which is not really necessary, but just the tiniest bit in a couple places, and then put this all together, see how it ends up. Okay, so I put just a little bit of tension there. There I adjusted the screw, putting tension on the trigger spring. I don't know if you get to see it there. There you go. And with my new stainless steel pin, that should do the job quite nicely. Give it a couple of whacks so that it would stay in place. Has to be flush though, because the grip panels, they have no room there. This has to be completely flush on both sides, so it's a work of patience and little by little adjusting things. So the only thing I have left here to do is put the mainspring, the trigger spring, the hammer spring, which I'm gonna be doing right now. Let me see if I get this in position. So it's basically like your basic Smith & Wesson. I mean, the idea with the Manurhin was to have the GIGN started using the Smith & Wesson, and they liked it very much so, but it was not as durable as they were hoping so. So that's why this is mostly based on the on the Smith & Wesson, but it's you could say it's an improved an improved Smith & Wesson in many ways. This off the way there. If I have better luck like that. So this has to go there. Catching that part, and here we go down like so. This is much easier done without the camera, but I know you guys like watching this as if you're doing it yourself, which is kind of the point, but it's kind of tricky as well. I'm better off putting this bottom part here first, and then moving this over. Like that. There it is. So this in theory should be already working. I have the hand lever, the hand spring there, putting leverage on the hand. So as we work it, it should function as it is. Let's make sure everything is in place. It is. Remove any excess oil. The idea is not to oil this, just a tad of rust protection and the minimum amount of lubrication. That should do well enough. So now that I check that everything is in place, yeah, I can go back to putting the screw of the hammer spring in place. Yeah, lots of fun working with these guns. For people that say that revolvers are more simple, they obviously never disassembled one. Anyone that knows anything, well, not anyone that knows anything, because there's people that are supposedly knowledgeable that think that a revolver is more simple. Revolver is more simple in terms of user interface, using more millennial language, which is, you know, just pull the trigger and the gun, if everything is okay, works. Now the assembling one, it is more about clockwork than more mechanical stuff like you do in a pistol. Is more simple, more mechanical. A revolver is more about this. It's more about clockwork, fine-tuning, many times hand-fitting. If you're looking at some of those older very nice Colt revolvers, there's people that were true experts in their art of working with those revolvers. So it's not as simple as it sometimes looks. Now I'll have to take this to the range and then fine-tune the spring of the hammer and the spring of the trigger so as to get the best of both worlds in terms of adjusting it just enough so that I have proper ignition with the hammer spring, and then working with the trigger so as to have just the right amount of reset that I would be looking for. So after verifying everything, we see the gun is working properly. It needs to be adjusted well though, but that's going to be for the range. What we have to do now is reinsert the plate. See that it has a little barb there on the edge? That's going to be going flush right there. And then we're going to be aligning the other corners. Applying a little bit of pressure until it drops flush where it's supposed to. There it is. Nice and flush. Now we are ready to put these screws back in place. You don't have to over tighten them too much, just a tad. This one here, and this other one right there. Remember not to tighten these too tight. It's really not necessary. It's just keeping the plate in place. And if you ever have to disassemble again and you tighten it a lot, it is going to be a complete nightmare. So keep that in mind. Don't overdo it. Let alone put anything like thread lock or anything like that. It's nuts. Doesn't make any sense. All there's left to do is put back the grips. And that's going to be all. Just remember not to leave too much oil. Well, not too much, not oil at all. Just wipe it in case there's any drops, because any little bit of oil is likely to be soaked into the wood. Kind of ruins it, so make sure there's none. And when adjusting the screw, again, don't overdo it, just a little bit of pressure. Otherwise, you may end up cracking it. Wood is not always as strong as we may think, especially as it gets older, it gets a little bit more brittle. So be careful with the older ones. What I do is try to adjust it by hand a little bit, see if it sets better. Right, it is a 357 Magnum, so you have to keep a good grip on it, and if not, it's going to be shifting once you're shooting. So adjust it by hand, and then just a quarter of a turn just to make sure it's nice and tight, and that's it. Yeah, I'm gonna be having to take it to the range. Seems to be about fine, strong enough. Let me check. Yeah, this should be getting the job done. Seems nice and strong, and trigger is as beautiful as it always been. Just a fantastic trigger pull. Reset, just a little bit. I'm gonna be tightening it a little bit. You see how it resets? There it is. You see that? You see what happens? It's not fully resetting. It's just too soft. You see what's going on? Let's actually try to keep these videos nice and sweet and short, but this is a great opportunity to show you how this thing actually works, because this is the beauty of the MR73, the way in which you can adjust it to your exact desires. So let's take this screw out. Yeah, sorry, these videos sometimes get a little bit on the longer side, but so be it. If the grips are just a little bit tight, don't force them, just give it a little tap. So you saw how it was just not fully resetting as I released it. That is something that you adjust right here. So you start working on that. Haha, you saw that? How it just reset beautifully? I'm gonna be giving it just a little bit more of a turn. Now it's gonna be working. Just a sweet, sweet gun. There it is. Yep, that worked very well. Great. So happy with it. And double action. Great. So guys, that's been the finishing touches on the MR73. A little bit on how you fix these little things, or more about adjusting the gun exactly as you want it. Folks, it's gonna be all for now. Remember to subscribe, hit that notification bell button, because if not, you're not gonna be getting any future videos. Take care, see you on the next video. Have a great day.